When Reagan came into power, he brought us voodoo economics, Reaganomics, supply side economics. And what it did is he used deficit spending and huge cuts, all these kinds of things to really explode the deficit and with that, inflate the economy. It took Bush 1 and Bill Clinton to raise taxes and do the necessary things to readjust the economy and bring it back to some form of sanity. When Bush 2 came along, he came to a surplus in the budget. He came with a great economy, and he did the same thing. He blew it apart, and there ending with the great 2008 recession. Some people call it a depression. Then came, after being handed a very good economy, a great economy, well, not a great economy, but a very good economy, we got Senor Trump. He comes in, and he simply gets extremely irresponsible with it, with tax cuts that exploded the budget, deregulation that hurt a whole bunch, and we're paying the price for it, right? He closed down the office that took care of pandemics and much more. And we are now seeing the results. A market in free fall. One of Obama's old advisors, Council of Economic Advisors, Jason Furman, has a thought on that. So let's go ahead and play that, and we'll take it on the other side.
Is this 1987 or is this 1929, which you've already answered that it's closer to that. But maybe about 6 months ago, I reread John Kenneth Galbraith's book, The Great Crash, about the 1929 stock market crash. And when you read the things people were saying as it was already underway, as the crash was happening, there's so many people who sounded like Donald Trump saying it will bounce back, as the president said today. The stock market will bounce back. Don't worry about it. Larry Kudlow the other day saying invest as it's going down. You know, you'll be very happy with that. And of course, it's dropped dramatically since Kudlow said that. So just to set this for our audience perspective, you are comparing now to the 1929 crash of the stock.
Absolutely. And, you know, the difference is it depends on what happens. If, you know, we get through this virus in the next 2 months, then, you know, maybe it bounces right back. If it takes us 9 months, even at that point, if we find a cure for the vaccine, a lot of damage, a huge amount of damage will be done to companies, to workers, to unemployment of a type that would persist and, you know, could take a long time to recover from. So I'd love to have more reassuring things to say for you, Lawrence, but I am worried right now.
Well, you're confirming what I've been feeling in my amateur way about this. But so this presents an enormous policymaking challenge, because when you talk about things like payroll tax cut, which the president mentioned a few days ago, and it died instantly when the Senate Finance Committee chairman said he wouldn't even consider it, that could come back. But a payroll tax cut to a person who's no longer on a payroll doesn't work the way it might have, in the stimulative way you might have wanted it to while that person was still on a payroll.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So what I think we should do is, number one, everything we can do on health, free testing, which is in the House legislation. I think that's terrific. We're going to need a lot of hospital beds, a lot of ventilators. We're going to need that fast. Number two, anything we can do targeted at the people that most need it. That includes paid leave, unemployment insurance, assistance for states with their Medicaid programs, and nutritional assistance. Once you've done 1 and 2, that's still not large enough. There's still tens of millions of families you haven't reached. So number 3, I would send checks. I'd send cash. You get it whether you're working, whether you're not. A week ago, I proposed $1,000 for an adult, $500 for a child. I would at least double it based on the events of the last week.
And this is one of those moments where, from a policy perspective, quite literally the last thing you can worry about is the deficit and the debt. But unfortunately, we are at a high point in both deficit and debt.
It's the last thing you want to worry about. First of all, the real interest rate, that's the interest rate adjusted for inflation right now, is negative. That means you can give somebody $1,000 today, the government can borrow that money, and a decade from now, you only need to repay $900 adjusted for inflation. So That's one thing. The second thing is, let's say you really were concerned about the debt. You care about the debt relative to the economy. If the economy craters, the debt is actually larger relative to the economy. Right now, we can't afford, from a fiscal perspective or an economic perspective, not to do something as big as we possibly can.
Let me tell you what sort of upsets me. It upsets me because what Furman just talked about is could be aspects of what's known as modern monetary theory. And right now, you have most of the classic economics professors and economists right now laughing at that. Oh, that will create all these deficits, etc., etc. But we know that's not true. Where there's no scarcity, that's not true. But here is the thing. Because corporations are in trouble now, I mean, all these businesses have to close. People are at the grocery stores buying all kinds of foods and supplies to stay home. So therefore, there's no expectation that the stocks for all these companies that will be affected, it's going to rise. So therefore, we will stay in the condition that we're in. The advice that Jason Furman is given is sound advice. The only thing is, it's modern monetary theory to go ahead and implement these things that he's talking about. Some of what Andrew Yang talked about, some of what Bernie Sanders talked about, all these things combined is what can uplift again and revitalize the economy. Sad thing is, right now we have a permanent underclass, and we can use these same techniques to inflate some more so that we can bring everybody into the economy. Why is it that we have to wait for struggling corporations before everybody sees that, yes, it is okay to give stipends. Yes, it is okay for deficit spending as long as there is no scarcity. Folks, we have to learn a tad bit about economics so that we can force these politicians not to make the corporatocracy tell them what to do, but for us to have politicians who do what's best for the common person.